All right, good morning, everyone. This is the May 24th blockchain meeting. Let's go ahead and proceed with the mainnet check-in. We got one issue here, no microblocks being mined. So I know that we did enable it. It's definitely working. We spent a lot of time testing it. Is it the case that miners just aren't turning on that feature, or they are turning it on and it's just not happening?
I'm not sure. I guess the question is is the default still on, or like I haven't looked at what the configuration changes were before, but if we were explicitly disabling it and people are continuing to use the same configs, then it would remain disabled. And I think maybe in either the release notes or the announcements, if the action item is that people should kind of check their configs and remove that, that's something that we should call out. I don't know if that has happened. And again, is the default enabled right now?
To the best of my recollection, it is, but if it's not, then that needs to change. I'll add that to the release notes to do here.
Yeah, I believe that the default is enabled. So if miners are disabling it, yeah, they would need to update their configs and restart. Yeah.
It's not really a problem if they don't. Like, the transaction capacity of the chain is the same either way. It's more of a, do we want microblocks to happen so we can brag about them now?
Yes. Well, maybe stepping back a second. This was flagged by Matt. Matt, since you're on the call, do you want to just chime in here? Basically, what you observed in the process of building on the microblock support on the API side.
So I synced all the way to chain tip on mainnet this weekend, and it looks like there haven't been microblocks accepted in an anchor block since about like half the lifetime of the chain. I don't remember the exact block heights. Yep.
Is that right?
Is the foundation still running a miner, Jude?
It's not mining.
Okay. I think this would suggest that there's no miners on the network that have microblocks enabled. And given that the total number of miners is not a large number, I think we can make this
notification. Like, you have to understand, like, if miners don't want to turn it on, they don't have to turn it on. So. For
sure. I suspect that it's probably just more oversight than a deliberate choice, because we had disabled it, and maybe people just don't know to enable it. So yeah. Okay, so one action item is we can just send another notification, maybe in the mining channel or through other means, just to remind people if they have it disabled to re-enable it, and then we can see if the foundation wants to spin up or re-enable mining on your miner, so that at least we have one miner on the network. That's something to consider as well.
Well, at the very least, we should probably test to see that it actually is mining microblocks, because it would be surprising. It might be the case that for whatever reason, like, the config file is being ignored.
Yeah.
This just warrants a little bit more investigation.
Okay. So you'll do that test on the foundation miner.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do it with mock mining. Like, you can see it building microblocks.
Go ahead, Ludo.
Yes, so I looked into this issue a few weeks ago, and I just looked at it again. And so we have the mine microblock option in the config, but it's not being used in the code. So yeah, there might be an issue. Like, maybe the microblock mining is just disabled, and you can't enable it right now.
What happens if you send a microblock only transaction? Does it get mined? Because, like, another possibility is that, like, the people sending transactions now are sending them as anchor block only. Like, if that's the default in stacks.js, for example, then
I think that by default in stacks.js it's either.
Okay.
Although we have a PR out to change that also. So we should definitely get to the bottom of this before that PR goes out.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, that can be something that I work on this week before the release. Anything else on this issue?
Nope.
All right, testnet check-in. So I saw the discussion on Discord. Ludo, can we confirm that there are in fact tens of thousands of requests hitting V2 info all of a sudden?
So per Grafana, yes, that's the case. But then I don't really know if like it's an internal service of ours that is spamming our server. Yeah, like we don't know the origin of the yeah. Go ahead, Giordi.
Yeah, Jude. So we did see a lot of these requests coming into the logs. They're all requesting V2 info. They would come in blocks of roughly 50 to 100 log items at a time. Unfortunately, we don't know where they're coming from because of the way we're running this service. We can't track the originating IP address. I did file an issue, which I shared with everyone in Discord.
Yes.
If we have that info, it may give us some more insight into what these requests are, where they're coming from, if they're bad. Right now, we just don't know. We just see a lot of them.
Is it persistent or is it just like a burst?
It looks very bursty. So when Lulu and I were working on this, we would start the testnet mock miner, and then curl the V2 info endpoint to see that things were happening. Sometimes it would take 2 seconds. Other times it would take more than 3 minutes to return that curl.
Yes.
And then going back to the logs, I would see that these blocks of V2 info requests were coming in just in, hit or miss, really. It's very strange. We have our theories, but we have no information to support any theory at this point.
Alrighty, yeah, let's, is there something you can stick between the node and the ingress that could log the origin IP?
Yes. Well, no. Yes and no. Sorry. Yes and no. We can, but it would be something new on our end to do that. So it may take a little extra time because this is running a non-standard HTTP port. So we'd have to run a different service than we currently do to log that information.
Yeah, we tried doing that last year, and there were some heavy compromises involved with that. So we just ended up not doing that.
Exactly. I mean, if it's for a test, we could potentially do it just for a test, but this is not something we want to do long term.
All right, so it sounds like the least painful option is to modify the HTTP header.
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that should be doable. We could even fold it into 2.0.11.1.
Sorry, modify the HTTP header.
Yeah, in the HTTP response, I think you can make the stacks node just return its peer address of the HTTP conversation as a header item.
Essentially, Aaron, what I put in the issue is, it would be very helpful if we had the originating IP address in that log entry for V2 info, for example.
Yes, I agree. That's adding more data to the log entries, which is different than modifying our HTTP headers, right?
Which do you, I guess it depends on how that log entry is getting generated. Are you siphoning off the HTTP headers to generate the log entry, or are you just
No, this is logs from the stacks node.
Ah, okay.
Like right now, the way that the stacks node logs HTTP responses is like, yeah.
Okay. So just fix that to store the peer address. It's even easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for, Jude.
Okay, I can do that. That's pretty easy. Alrighty. It's out of order here. Let's go ahead and run through the board. Is this ready, Ludo? Can we merge this? SQLite suffix instead of the DB suffix?
Yes, I just need to. So I'm going to send another PR with an update of the changelog,
Okay.
and I'm going to merge this one.
Sounds good. And we got the 2.0.11.1 draft here. Can we wait for these two issues here to be resolved before we release 2.0.11.1?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Mining related stats on Prometheus. I think we still have some comments here. Pavitra, what's the status of this?
The status, I think I resolved, I addressed the comments, so it's like ready for another round of review.
All right, cool. Just re-request. I apologize, Aaron, I haven't had a chance to get to this yet. But how do you feel about this PR?
Yeah, I think it's ready for review. Last week I was a little, I thought a little bit more about the trade-offs between this approach and trying to do something where we duplicate the VM code base so that we have like sort of an immutable VM code base and a mutable one, like for Clarity 2, Clarity 1, like we would just have different modules for every version of the Clarity VM. After having thought about it some more, like I don't think that the safety benefits are actually that great, because even in Clarity 2, where we're not doing that many changes, like we are still doing some data formatting changes with the stacks accounts, which means that we would need to be modifying the Clarity 1 module anyways. So yeah, I think that the benefits are not so great that they outweigh sort of the costs of that alternative approach.
So when reviewing the Clarity 2.1 PRs, I guess maybe the thing we need to keep our eye on is all changes that happen need to basically be gated by the epoch or by the.
Yes, and so this PR makes it very easy to do those changes in a gated way for new functions. Like as long as you're adding new functions, the style of approach in this PR makes it very easy. If you're altering the behavior of existing functions, which we probably shouldn't do for Clarity 2, you would need to do something a little bit more.
Altering the behavior of existing functions. Aren't we doing that for stacks transfer?
No, what we should do is just change stacks transfer so that instead of having an optional last argument, there's like a new stacks transfer memo. Okay, and one other thing that I opened an issue for that we can just talk about right now is this one right here, report any burn chain block hash. I was thinking about adding that to get block info, because right now you can't actually get the Bitcoin block header for an arbitrary Bitcoin block. It has to be one in which there's a stacks block mined. That would need to be a new function. Yeah, that would be a new function, I think. Yeah. Okay, that sounds reasonable. Like that's certainly all doable, and that definitely solves the problem of how do we deal with multiple forms of the same function, which was kind of something we were thinking about earlier. Yeah, that's cool. Alrighty, Matt, emit microblocks mined by the node itself, add microblock hashes. Is this blocked on microblock mining, or are you able to test this by looking at an earlier version of the chain history?
So I'm able to test this with the private testnet setup.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
I think we lost you there for a sec.
Yeah, that's it. And the latest status on this, there was one more set of changes that we needed to the new block event to include some more microblock related data. So that got added to this PR, and I think Patty's helping me with adding integration tests for those, or unit tests for those.
Awesome, sounds good.
Wait, also, just to clarify, you also want to add the burn block stats for the new microblock event in this PR as well, right?
Yeah, it could be in this PR or a new one. But yeah, it's that would be like super helpful for the initial microblock release to get that in.
Sure. Okay, I'll add it to that.
Cool. Updating the configs. I think all of my comments were addressed on this, but I'll just take another look at it. Because I think the question we had like earlier was, are we going to require people to run their own Bitcoin node? And I guess the answer to that is yes at some point. Launch testnet via Stacks node. This is just a one-line change, right?
Yeah, it's yeah.
Are we just blocked on him signing the CLA, him or her? I'm actually not sure. They signing the CLA assistant.
I mean, if the change is trivial, maybe we can just merge it and move on.
Sure. You want to do that, Ludo?
Sure. Yeah.
Thanks. Private local testnet support. Is it still a draft?
Yeah, I think I need to just clean it up and then it'll be ready for review.
Alrighty,
It's a
cool.
fairly small change.
Sounds good. And we're still waiting for the Rust compiler to work in a cross compilation setting here, right? For the ARC64.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. In progress. I'm really close on this one. I spent the whole weekend trying to get this ready for today, only to find out like there's something wrong with either my test code or with the code as itself that's causing it, such that when a node changes the what it believes to be the chain with the most confirmations of anchor blocks, it's not getting the same consensus hashes as it would have had it simply mined those blocks as is. I don't know why, but it would be it's straightforward to figure out. I'm just ran out of time on Sunday night trying to figure out why that happens. So I hope to get this done. I hope to get this done as soon as possible. Minor relevant Prometheus metrics. Is this what Vithra has been working on?
Yeah, it's the same thing.
All right, we can see it in progress. Clarity versioning with Pragmas, that's Aaron's PR, that's in progress. RESTful API for querying blockchain status.
Yeah, I have to still add a test for it. I hadn't gotten back to that yet.
Alrighty. And accurate runtime costs. How are we doing on this, Reed?
Good. Not much to report, but yeah, I'm actively working on this at the moment. Yeah, still very much in progress.
All right, microblock data missing from there while syncing. Is this the same issue, Matt? That's you have a PR out for?
Yeah, it's one of the issues that PR is fixing.
Okay, putting that into review in progress. All right, we just talked about this. I'll take this on this week, making it so we log the source IP address. Sorry, the peer IP address. This was noticed by Frieger. Again, it's just get block info doesn't return the Bitcoin block header for an arbitrary Bitcoin block height. It'll just return the Bitcoin block header for a Stacks block height. And that's not helpful if you're trying to do something like verify that a Bitcoin transaction happened on the Bitcoin chain. So we should definitely fix that in 2.1. Burn block properties to the new microblocks payload. Is that part of this? That's part of this PR as well, right?
Yeah, I think Pavi's working on it. And just to give some context to this, the really important thing here is the burn block time field. So right now that's just not available to show for unconfirmed microblock transactions, and it's like the only canonical source of time that I think clients are relying on right now. So just not having that field is pretty bad. Like it creates a breaking change that I think like pretty much all the clients would have to try to deal with one way or another. So yeah, I would say this is like relatively high priority.
All right, cool. So yeah, let's make sure that's added in. I noticed this bug last week, the middle of last week. I noticed that when you query v2pox, the min threshold UStax value can increase during a reward cycle. That's probably not what we want to have happen. Or maybe it is. Open to discussion here, but I know that it broke Stacking Club. The reason it can increase is because the total liquid supply is constantly increasing, and min threshold microstacks is a function of the total liquid supply. But the reason why this is relevant here is because this value here is used to calculate how many stacks are required to secure a reward slot. So if you have downstream clients using this data, like Stacking Club was, then that you would see the minimum number of rewards of the minimum stacking threshold for rewards increase surreptitiously, and that would also change the number of reward slots you're allocated. I think Stacking Club fixed this. I noticed that it reverted back to the way it was this cycle. Is this something that the node needs to fix, or should we just always report the most up-to-date min threshold here? What do y'all think?
It seems wrong for the current cycle data to be not static.
Yeah, that's the feeling I got too.
Yeah.
But if downstream clients are able to be aware of this, I don't know to what extent it's our problem anymore. But yeah, I agree, it feels wrong. So we should probably fix that.
We should probably just fix it. Like, no reason to continue reporting bad data, even if downstream clients can adjust.
That's true. Cool. Allow user to process more than one transaction per block in Clarity CLI. I think this is like a known issue with Clarity CLI. Yeah, we just don't have time to do it before the 2.0.11.1 release. But yeah, this is something we should do at some point. Standardized network names and user-facing configs. I know we talked about this last time. This is like, don't use the noble gas names in the user-facing code anymore. And okay, and now we're at the end of the list. This is all stuff that was done or opened the week prior. I still haven't gotten to this yet. This is just, low priority once we have some other things cleared out here. And any progress on the Krypton node? Is it still slow?
I haven't checked on it since like a week before I left on vacation, so maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But yeah, last I know, it is still slow, and I'm not sure that there's anything that we could do as far as like a DevOps perspective to improve that.
All right, maybe just not worry about it for now. If people need to have a local test, if people need like a Krypton-like environment, they can just run it locally potentially.
Yeah, although I think we still, or at least I would love to at least have a hypothesis for why is syncing the rec test so slow, because whatever problem we're hitting here will likely hit either on the testnet or on the mainnet at some point anyways.
Well, I can tell you when 1805 closes, we won't need to have the POX sync watchdog anymore, because the system can just look at the burn chain and infer which anchor blocks it needs to wait for. I think that's ultimately the source. Looking at the logs, like that's probably the source of slowness here. Either waits forever for an anchor block, or it tries to soldier on without an anchor block, only to find the anchor block later, and then it does a POX reorg. I don't know. I don't know the first time I looked at the logs.
Maybe a better actionable item here, which I think has come up in other contexts as well, is in general thinking about like improving the observability of what is happening on Stacks node. So oftentimes we'll have these situations where something seems slow, whether it's like one specific endpoint or the process of like bringing a node, catching it up to the network. And I think we don't have sort of good mechanisms to easily answer where the node is spending time. And I would love for us to have like maybe like a more standardized approach, like making sure that we have, for example, I don't know if this is already the case, but if we have making sure we have some Prometheus metrics around like all database paths, for example, so that it's easy for us to just look at a node in production and be able to say, where is it spending time? Do people have thoughts on like improving the observability that we can sort of, act on today versus, doing these like one-off investigations?
I agree with that. I think having something like that would be really helpful. I don't know if Prometheus is the best tool for that, just because, it's very configuration intensive for that. I wonder if there would be like a third-party tool that might be easier to use for that.
I was going to say, it doesn't sound like Prometheus is the best tool for this either. This sounds like some application performance monitoring tools.
Mhm.
I mean, I think the general issue is like, can we add performance hooks and trace points into the node that other monitoring applications can hook into?
Yeah.
That would be very good, actually. So like if the Stacks node would emit something that the internal tool finds, and then Prometheus could import it, that would be acceptable, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll look around and see if I could find anything like that for Rust specifically.
I wouldn't get my hopes up there. It's probably something we'll have to do ourselves.
Gotcha.
Well, I would like vote in favor of doing everything we can to not do anything ourselves. I think if we come up with a solution that like looks like trace logging, we're going to end up in a pretty bad situation where, like, in order to diagnose these kinds of things, we're going to need to generate 200 gigabytes of logs.
Yeah. Okay.
And so there are approaches where you can like intermittently perf, and that should work with our builds that have debug symbols turned on and stuff like that. So I don't know. I would be in favor of trying to explore like any way we can to not have to sort of custom tailor anything in the Stacks node.
Yeah, adding like trace points. I know that like in Linux at least, there's some instrumentation you can do that lets you. I think you can like run the program inside of an eBPF wrapper or something like that. Like you can have the kernel report perf-like data, but you can customize what events you're looking for or what entry points you're looking for or something like that. I need to look more into it. I know that Bitcoin does this for the same reasons. I don't know. This is kind of a big project when you think about it, like, because in order to not end up where we kind of are now, where we just have to log everything to figure things out, you kind of have to, systemically look at all the possible slow points and figure out like what's worth logging, what's not worth logging, and make it so that the perf doesn't, change the node's behavior such that you can't see the slow paths when the perfing is turned on.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily need to kind of over-engineer this and come up with like some very complicated solution. And even though maybe like Prometheus is not, like the ideal solution at the in the grand scheme of things, I think there are very incremental and tactical things that we can and should do. So again, maybe like two concrete things, and I think the issue that Ludo linked in here maybe is the one that we can use to capture. But I think a good starting point would be to say like every HTTP endpoint has a Prometheus timer around it. And then, if there is an easy way to encapsulate like all database operations and put some timers around them as well.
Just so that's probably not possible.
Because we don't have like an abstraction layer where there's like a small surface area that we could instrument.
No, it's that the traffic you generate is probably so high that, it might make its own problems. Is my understanding of that correct, Joe Wiley?
I'm not sure if I'll.
You said that Prometheus is probably not the best tool for this, for monitoring things like whenever we access a database.
Yes,
So
the reason I say that is because it would require a lot of custom tooling inside.
Right.
It would be very specific for Prometheus to do it. Whereas if we had some kind of generic profiler that can get this data and then just export it, and then Prometheus could use that exported data, that would be pretty good, I think. It's just the idea is to reduce the work needed to get this
Yeah.
data.
You can create a lot of spaghetti code with
Right.
Prometheus. It's too configuration heavy.
Right.
All right, let's move on from here. Maybe we can take this offline. I think the need is clear to me. Maybe we need to figure out, like, what is a good actionable step here.
Yeah, and that's why I was suggesting it might need like a design doc. Stacks 2.1 work streams. I think we're about where we were last time. This is review in progress. So let's see, Epoch Switch. Aaron, what's next on your plate here for 2.1 after you get the version switching?
Yeah, so the next thing is what I'm currently working on, which is the POX 2.1 contract instantiation and the like related data changes. Yeah.
Sounds good. Reed, Pavitra, you guys are going to be working on the runtime costs after you're finished with Prometheus and with refactoring.
No, I'm currently working on the runtime costs. Yeah.
Cool. Pavitra, what are you working on with 2.1?
If the static analysis is now included in that conceptually, then that.
I'm not sure it's 2.1 specific because it's not a breaking change. But is that on the board somewhere? Maybe not here, but on the other board.
I actually don't think we put on the board, but I can add some issues for that.
Yeah, that'd be
Sweet.
great. Just
Yeah.
please send them to the not the 2.1 board, but the other project board.
Yep, I will.
Sounds good. Anyone else working on a 2.1 issue that's not being reported here?
So I'm working on the, so it's on the other board, but it's a 2.1. I'm working on 2.1 changes, and it's like the functions for converting types to buffers. Yeah.
Okay, why isn't it? That's weird. It should be on this board unless something's really screwed up here. Yeah, this is like string to buff to
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to make a big difference.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And same with this one. Cool. Awesome.
Hey, I'm not sure if this is relevant, but I'm working on, as part of my onboarding, this thing about the ASCII treat string ASCII string UTF as buffer sequences for as max length and other stuff like that in the documentation.
Okay, yeah, that's that's
Kind of a starter project. But
I'm not sure. Is there a that's this issue right here, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think so.
All right, cool. Can I go ahead and assign you?
Sure.
That's
Actually, Greg.
Greg, not Patrick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Red. What's your GitHub handle?
Gregory Coppola.
Greg, are you not in the GitHub org yet?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
I would
there
probably
should have been a checklist
not.
item on your
Yeah.
onboarding.
Greg, just send me an email at jwiley.
Okay.
And I can take care of it for you.
Okay.
I'll just need your GitHub ID, obviously.
Okay.
And feel free to assign yourself to this issue when you have that. Sound good?
Yep. Sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for taking care of that. It's confusing a lot of people. Anything else for discussions? I think we're going to try to get these two small changes into 2.0.11.1. I see we have Mempool Anti-Entropy protocol. Is that something that's now a pressing issue?
Yeah, it came up in an internal conversation, so I wanted to at least bring it up here so we can talk about it as a group, and yeah, see if we need to revise the prioritization I guess like maybe what would be helpful for me is just get a sense of complexity. Like, how big of a change is this to implement? I mean, it seems like a useful thing to have, and I do think that we every time we are kind of looking into transactions pending into Mempool, once we set aside, either nonce related issues or like other kind of obvious failure modes, this seems to be the other kind of symptom that keeps coming up. So
Yeah,
in terms of like outstanding issues that can improve the user experience as well as kind of predictability on the miner side, I think this is a good one to have. But yeah, how complicated is it to implement, I guess is the question.
well, before we even talk about that, like there's 3 bullet points that we came up with when we last discussed this in January. The first one, like we can ignore this first one for now, but the one that's really sticking out here is how certain are we that the lack of anti-entropy is the cause of transactions not being mined?
Yeah, I think Aaron, you were saying that you have some stats now that you could look into.
Yes, I collected some stats a long time ago. I think that maybe the tangible next step is to make sure that the nodes that we're running in our infrastructure have runtime TX log enabled. And then we'll have better statistics about this. But like looking into user transactions, like based on people who have made it to basically the support queue and things like that. I haven't seen any transactions that were being delayed due to a lack of an anti-entropy protocol. That's not to say that they don't exist. I'm sure that they do. But the scale of this issue is still unclear in my mind. And I think we should grapple with that before messing with the anti-entropy protocol. Because even if this is a fairly small change, like it's pretty high impact and it's very hard to test. So yeah, that's sort of my concern is like changes to our networking protocol have historically been pretty painful. So yeah.
Okay.
Are there other action items besides turning on TX log?
I don't think so. I mean, maybe the next action item is like 7 days later, analyzing the TX log data.
Is that something that we would enable in the config for Stack?
Yeah, it's an environment variable.
Okay.
So yeah, if you tag me on these, I can sync with Charlie and Jay Wiley offline on.
I think maybe the stat you want to figure out here then is if you can look at a node's TX log and you can look at the node's mempool, can you figure out if TXs show up in the blockchain that the node never saw in the mempool? And that would be a strong indicator of the lack of an anti-entropy protocol causing a transaction to not get picked up by the network.
Yeah, I think that that probably won't be that useful because like our nodes themselves are like very well connected when it comes to transactions because most things default to broadcasting their transactions via our infrastructure.
Yeah, but you'd probably want to test something like a natted node that's like really doesn't have any inbound peers at all and is just dependent on learning.
Yeah, I think we should we can just take a look on like what transactions have been pending for a very long time and factor out the ones that are pending for a different reason. Yeah.
If my this is going to be hard. It's going to be hard to get some useful stats on this in a general sense because my current understanding of the network topology is that our seed nodes are, as you point out, very well connected. Like most peers have them in their neighbor set. The miners, as far as I know, are mostly, if not entirely, natted. But I think they all have our seed nodes as their initial bootstrap peers, or they're connected to a node that does. Like maybe they have two nodes, one public for relaying the transactions and one private for mining the blocks. And they just have the miner use that public node that they also control as their seed node. But that public node might in turn use our seed nodes. What I'm trying to say is like the size and scale of the network. Like once the network gets so big that the that it's unlikely that most nodes are unlikely to have the seed nodes as their peer set. Like what would that tell us at that point? Or can we simulate that outcome? Can we make it so that we're testing nodes that do not have the seed nodes or do not have neighbors that have the seed nodes in their
Well, I think that like there's a difference between trying to collect data about the network as it's functioning today and trying to test behaviors of sort of like future topographies or like growth in the network.
Right.
And I would say that for this right now, we should figure out what's going on today, see how big of a problem it is. And that'll tell us like how to prioritize this. Like if we want to worry about a future in which our seed nodes are like not primarily connected to every single person's follower, we can do that. But yeah, that seems like something that we can prioritize maybe a little bit lower.
Right, because I strongly suspect that like if you're just bouncing your transactions off the seed nodes and most people's nodes are connected to our seed nodes, then the anti-entropy protocol is probably not even necessary. Like it's just not going to help you.
If the seed nodes are used as the bootstrap node by default for every Stacks node that runs, won't the seeds always be a neighbor?
Not necessarily. The seed nodes will. I mean, there's a limit to how many neighbors the seed nodes will retain that are inbound, right? So if there are more nodes than the seed nodes have capacity to maintain as inbound neighbors, then we'll start to hit cases where your transaction may not in fact be mirrored to you.
I've made a few entries to the chat, Jude. I think we can do something with test grounds around this. The caveat is we'd have to, potentially fork it to ignore the seed nodes in the neighbors list.
Yeah, and to be clear, like we're just trying to figure out right now, like to what extent a mempool anti-entropy protocol is strictly necessary. If it's the case for the time being that this property of the network topology is sufficient to make a mempool anti-entropy protocol low priority, then that's the answer we can work with, and then we can just say this issue is now low priority because for the time being, transactions and the relay system do a good enough job at ensuring transactions arrive to all of the nodes. Like I believe that there will be a point where we will need an anti-entropy protocol, but that point might be far enough in the future that there are other things that need to be prioritized first.
Okay.
I think is the gist of what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to start looking at it, just let me know. Send me an issue. I'm happy to, go down the test grounds path when you're ready.
Yeah, sounds good. But it probably won't be unless this is like a burning issue right now. It's probably better that we spend our time working on 2.1 before getting this working.
Yeah, and it seems like we have a clear kind of action item here, right? Which is that on the next, we at least the hero operated nodes we can enable TX log on them, and then actually have some metrics that we can look at in a few weeks' time to see if it's worth revisiting this.
Yep. All right, issue 2668. Oh yeah, we already talked about this. Cool, is there anything else for discussion?
Yeah, I spoke with someone this morning that was very interested in the minor metrics, that PR that was that Pavi's working on. So I just wanted to mention that specifically.
Okay. Do we think we'll have that ready by 2.0.11.1?
Yeah, it should be okay. I think there's like one failing test. We're gonna look at after this meeting, but it should be okay.
Cool, sounds good. Can you go ahead and tag your PR then as meant for this release? All right, is there anything else for discussion? And from the community? All right, I'll stop recording. Oh wait, we've got a chat here. Okay, Dan saying no thanks.